this is Laura Mailman, and I'm here with Mike McLeieer, and we're excited to have him here as our guest to talk to you about some of the things that he does for the Merrimac Fire Department and through his organization, which is known as Escape. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Laura.
So
Thank
glad
you for
to have
having me.
you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So let's just start right from the beginning. Not everybody knows what it is that you do for the town, and give us a little bit of background, and I'll question you from there.
Sounds good. Well, I'm the public education officer for the Merrimac Fire Department. I've been on the fire department for 12 years, and I also work for the State Fire Marshal's office as the juvenile fire setting and fire prevention training coordinator. So we not only teach at the local level, but now our program has been recognized at the state level and also at the national level, teaching for the U.S. Fire Administration's National Fire Academy. So we can really utilize some of those great efforts at the federal level and bring some of those best practices back here to Merrimac, share with our residents, including the school-age children, which primarily I focus on education in the schools and the communities through our Student Awareness of Fire Education program, to be able to give people ways that they can stay safe. It's our goal within the fire department, and all of our members believe that prevention is really our key effort, and if we can prevent a fire or an injury from happening in the first place, we don't deal then with the reactive side of having to go out and put a fire out or deal with an injury that could have been prevented. So we really spend a lot of our time when we're not out responding to calls, actually taking the time to look at how can we prevent future incidents from happening.
Being very proactive.
That's right, that's right. And that's really a good focus that I think the federal folks really looked at, is how is Merrimac able to leverage additional funding, and how are they able to sustain this even with the tough fiscal times that we've seen. And it's all about collaboration. So we collaborate with you and the Council
Senior
of
Center.
Aging. Exactly. And others throughout the town. Our schools have been very supportive for many, many years with our program. And that's why the program has worked well, because we bring people to the table with all different levels of expertise to be able to all accomplish that goal of prevention.
Now, you've been doing this for 12 years?
12 years for Merrimac, 18 years within my career. And as you mentioned, I have a nonprofit charity that I founded 18 years ago in 1995, and it's called Escape, Education Showing Children and Adults Procedures for Evacuations. It's a 501c3 nonprofit charity, and we've been able to utilize the successes with the charity to be able to reach out to some of those grants that are available through foundations to be able to expand our outreach efforts.
So some of the things that the charity has been able to do through the grant writing, specifically in our community, what have you been able to bring in that without this organization we wouldn't be able to have?
Well, one of the things that I found early on is when I started our charity, is grant writing was a high priority for successful funding. And we use those same successes here within the town to be able to look for some of the state and federal grants, both through emergency management and also for the fire department, to be able to be prepared when emergencies take place. A good example would be one of the most recent emergencies would be Hurricane Sandy. And the town was very well prepared. Even the recent blizzard that we just had in February, we were prepared because we had the tools and the resources in place. There's always wants and needs out there, but we've been very successful to be able to identify what the priorities are and how we can tie those priorities in with keeping our firefighters and also the public safe. So some of the grants that we've received is firefighter equipment, better equipping our rescue trucks so that when there is a motor vehicle crash or an accident, we're able to deal with those situations much more effectively with our jaws of life. If we have to get someone who's entrapped in a vehicle out quickly, especially if they have medical injuries, we have the tools now to be able to do that. Much of the fundraising that takes place has been through our volunteer efforts and our hose company and the couplings, which are the Firefighters Association and the Ladies Auxiliary here within Merrimac. But we found that hasn't been enough to take care of our needs and our growing diverse population.
About how much grant money do you need to get per year to be able to do these kinds of educational opportunities and purchase the supplies that are needed in the community?
Our grant from the State Fire Marshal's Office, the Student Awareness of Fire Education Program, has been in existence since 18 years, or for 18 years, I should say. That grant specifically allows us to have trained and educated firefighters in the classroom, working with the schools and collaborating on prevention messaging throughout the year. Typically, we found that some fire departments across the country typically focused on fire education just one time during the year, during October Fire Prevention Month. Having an early childhood education background as I have, we found that educating early and educating often is really a more effective way for students to make the proper choices when they're faced with emergency situations. And the collaboration that we have with the Pentucket Regional School District has been excellent, because when we're not in the classroom, the teachers are continuing to facilitate the important messaging.
Fabulous.
And the consistent messaging that you and I both know is important as we're trying to raise a fire-safe generation.
Right. Well, I think that is true for all ages, you know, and we need to be reminded frequently.
Yes.
Because our lives are so busy, and, you know, you can think
right.
of afterwards, oh, I knew that. I shouldn't have done that. What did I do that for? But, so you're working with the district now. Does that include Groveland and West Newbury, or just the high school? What is it?
It does.
encompass?
It includes right now the elementary school buildings in Groveland and West Newbury, including working with the local fire departments. One of the things that we were asked to do is really expand the successful program in Merrimac into the other communities, but we wanted to make sure that we did that and collaborated with our local communities and shared some of the best practices with them. Not only are we teaching the students, but we want to make sure we continue to mentor our public safety professionals on some of the best practices that are out there and listen to their input, because every community is a little bit different.
Right.
And the wants
That's
and needs
true.
are a little bit different, even within the district, the school district of Pentucket. So understanding what our problems are and then coming up with solutions through education has been really well received by everyone.
So how do you identify what the needs or problems are?
One of the things we look at is we look at the types of incidents we're responding to.
Okay.
So we look at our
the
calls,
fire calls.
either fire or emergency medical calls.
Okay.
We'll take an example. If someone had repeated false fire alarms, we may want to have an educational session with them on the importance of making sure that that system is not activating on a false basis, because it ties up resources that may be taken away from a real emergency.
Right.
In the schools, for example, if we have a student that activates a fire alarm and it's a false fire alarm, just using a hypothetical, that puts all of the occupancy in that school building in danger, because everyone's having to quickly evacuate. We're having all the emergency responders respond to what they think is an actual emergency, and it's never a good situation, and that can lead to other types of trouble or other types of...
And there is costs associated with that as well.
Absolutely.
So-
Very expensive whenever we run even the ambulance, the brush truck, or even the engine out of the fire station, because we have not only the personnel, but the wear and tear on the apparatus and the fuel, which continues to rise as we're seeing here over this month, and much higher than what we've seen at this time in many years. So we always have to look at, again, what's our most effective way. And one of the things Merrimac was very fortunate about is last year I was actually asked to present one of 13 fire departments across the country and in Canada, across the United States and Canada, to actually talk about models in fire prevention. So we were very fortunate that an application that I had submitted for a call for presentation was selected, and I was actually the only person in Massachusetts that was selected to present outside of Washington, D.C.
Wow.
To an audience of about 160 to 180 professionals from all over the country.
That's quite an honor.
It was. And it was
Congratulations.
Really, thank you. And it was really neat to be able to share our successes and find out that everyone has challenges. And everyone across the country that's really in a leadership role is taking these problems and they're turning them into solutions. And we do that through problem identification, our risk assessment, understanding what types of responses that we're going to, and then how can we change behavior, maybe through education. We'll take, for example, if someone were to leave a space heater in a room.
Like this morning?
Yeah, it wasn't even
At my
going to go
house.
there. There you go. Yeah, but you and I did talk about that.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
if a space heater is left unattended, could that be a cause for fire? If we have a power outage and people resort to candles, they may think that that's an alternative, and it may be, in their mind, a safe alternative, but a safer choice would be to use a battery-operated LED light or lantern or flashlight or things like that.
What about kerosene lanterns?
Kerosene lanterns, again, I still have the concern because we have open flame, and especially if we have homes where there might be young children or pets, there's always that opportunity that that could be tipped over. And it's used quite frequently when we go up country camping or things like that.
Right.
But so much of the technology has really advanced with LED lighting.
That lasts longer.
Much longer,
So,
yes, and much brighter.
You know, right.
Versus
that is
the old
true.
incandescent
Yeah,
bulb
just a
that you
little
and I grew
battery,
up
yeah.
with, exactly. Now the LED lighting is lower draw on the battery and actually lasts a lot longer and lights up an entire room. So just giving people those choices when we've come in and partnered with you and worked with those at the Senior Center, you and I have had numerous great questions that have come up,
Absolutely, yeah.
just so that we redirect people into better choices.
One of the questions that invariably comes up is how to stay warm when the power goes out. Fortunately, in Merrimac, that doesn't happen very often.
That's
We
right.
have a wonderful highway department that works with the electric department. They, trim the trees and so forth. But still, upon occasion, something happens, and maybe a transformer blows, and you're without power for 2 to 4 hours.
Right.
And with a winter storm approaching us again, that reminds me that, how do you stay warm for that period of time where it's freezing outside and you may not have power for a while? What should they be doing?
Well, we want to have a plan ahead of time. We want to think about, even though we have had very low incidence of power outages or extended power outages, there's always that possibility. And especially as we've talked about in the past, if our main feed coming into Merrimac is interrupted, that doesn't allow our power company the opportunity to take corrective action, because we
Right.
have to have a supply before they can make sure that grid is
Right.
re-energized.
So if the national grid goes down
Right.
outside of Merrimac, there's nothing we can do until it comes back up.
That's right, that's right. But some things to think about again, and I know you and Chief Spencer work very proactively, as does Chief Shears, on making sure that we have phone lists and
Yes.
understanding the seniors who may be, or anyone, for example, that may not have another place to go. Do they have a family member that they can go and stay with during that power outage, or do they have ways that they can stay warm with maybe additional clothing or blankets if it's a short-term outage? Longer-term outages, then we start seeing people sometimes resort to maybe unsafe things that they may think are safe at the time.
Like turning on a stove.
Exactly. Or an oven, or even using a fireplace that hasn't been used for many, many years. And especially in a
point.
lot of our older
Hasn't been
structures.
cleaned.
There you go. Or inspected, because it doesn't take long for the chimney flue to crack, and embers can seed themselves into the wooden structure, and over time could cause a
That's
fire.
a good point.
So we want to make sure that, and we're seeing this with higher fuel costs, people are resorting to alternative heating sources that may not be something that's been used for quite an extended period of time. And even when we utilize, more and more families and homes may have generators, we have to keep in mind that's another way to heat the home, but we have to make sure that generator is far enough away from the structure and not near an open window or a window or opening that carbon monoxide could back up into the home. I remember when we had a bad ice storm a few years ago up in New Hampshire, there were some incidents where people were concerned that their generator was going to be stolen, so they put the generator in the garage with the
Right.
door open.
Right.
And in the consumer's mindset, they thought they were doing everything safely because they were getting ventilation, but in fact the carbon monoxide was still overpowering
Still coming
the home.
in.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why in Massachusetts we're so fortunate that not only do we have a law that requires working smoke alarms on every level of the home, but also working carbon monoxide alarms. And it's
Yes.
important that we make sure that those devices are tested regularly and those batteries are replaced at least once a year. A lot of people don't realize smoke alarms have a life expectancy of 10 years. Carbon monoxide alarms have a life expectancy of between 5 and 7 years.
Okay.
So those devices do need to be replaced, and we certainly encourage
How do you
residents.
test them if you're not sure what the life expectancy is on either of those?
Great question. What we encourage is if there a lot of the newer devices that have been manufactured over the last 10 years will actually have a date code when they were manufactured imprinted right on the
Is the
smoke
code
alarm.
like clearly stated?
It is. It'll
You
be
know.
month and year. Yep.
Okay.
And if you remember when we partnered with the Lions Club a few years ago and we did the smoke alarm installation project across Merrimac, we actually took that one step further. We encouraged the installers who were trained by the fire department to actually use a black Sharpie marker, permanent marker, to write in when that detector was
On the
installed.
inside.
Exactly.
That's a good idea for anybody that
is.
is putting one in or replacing one
That's
to
right.
take a Sharpie and write the year so you're aware of when you put it in and when it should be replaced,
That's
which
right.
is 10 years for the smoke detector and 5 to 7
That's
for
right.
the
Carbon monoxide.
carbon
alarm.
monoxide. Great. And you said also that the fire department was very helpful to a number of seniors, but I would like to say that anybody that is having trouble with
That's
that,
right.
even now, can still call down to either the senior center or the fire department, and someone will go out
That's
and assist them in replacing those things, because we think of it as that important.
That's
So even though there's no grant money, we still continue to do that, and it's a great service to the community. So thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to add on that as well, we do have a limited amount, thanks to our friends at Energizer Battery Company. Every year, we apply for and receive a grant of free batteries. And you and I have distributed those in November, just before the holidays, to a lot of those that attend the lunches and so forth. And we found that to be another way that we can't service everyone, but if we have someone that has a need, we try and make sure that we have replacement 9-volt or AA batteries available, because some of the new detection equipment doesn't use 9-volt battery technology, it uses AA battery technology. So it is important for homeowners and consumers to understand what type of detection equipment that they have. Hardwired detection equipment, in many cases, has a battery backup, but if it was the first generation hardwire smoke alarm, it may not have a battery.
Which I think we can come back again in November, perhaps, when
Sure.
you're back here, and remind people. We're coming up now to the turning of the clocks. It's
That's
a
right. great
great time to replace the batteries, look at them. I'm not sure when that is going to happen, but when we lose the let's say it's spring ahead,
That's right.
when that happens, and I think it's in March.
It is.
That would be a good time to do it. And so just reminding people that that will work. And then again in the fall, when we fall back,
That's correct.
to change the batteries once again. And what about if your battery continues to make a lot of noise? You know, like I know for myself, like there's one that every time I cook, I swear it's going to go off. It drives me crazy.
Well, we have two different types of detection equipment. There's photoelectric and there's ionization smoke alarms. Ionization smoke alarms are the most common type of smoke alarms that most families have in their home. They're the least expensive and they work quite well. They actually work better for fast flaming fires, and the photoelectric technology works better for slow smoldering fires. So that's why a lot of times if someone is having an issue with a smoke alarm falsing or going off because of cooking, or even we see it as a result of someone in the shower and they open the bathroom door too quickly,
That's
the
another
steam,
one.
yes,
Yeah.
can set off the ionization smoke alarm. Photoelectric smoke alarm will actually correct that.
Photoelectric.
Yeah, we do recommend both types of detection technology because we never know how that fire might start.
Right.
And it certainly
Well, you would think a flash would happen in the kitchen,
Right.
but it's so sensitive.
That's right.
That, you know, if you're frying something or you're opening up the oven and,
Right.
you know, it just goes off. And so what do you end up doing? taking the battery out.
And that's not a good choice.
Not a good choice,
right.
but I can't cook while it's making that noise, so that's a great thing to know.
Now, a safer choice would be to take that hot pad or oven mitt or even a towel and wave it against the smoke alarm.
Oh, I've tried that.
And it doesn't work.
No.
A lot of the new technology, though, actually has a hush button. And that's nice
Okay.
because the newer detection units will actually have a silencing or hush button, which will silence that, what we call nuisance alarm. It knows that there's something going on, but we as a consumer know that it's not a fire and it's not a safety concern. And then that alarm will reset itself. It will still activate should there be a fire within that hush period of time.
That's great to know.
What it will do, and actually the detectors that we installed through that project a few years ago had the hush button. And it would actually hush the alarm. What we were having a problem with is some of the installers, when they were installing the alarms, were pushing the hush button. And then they were saying, this detector is defective. Exactly. So once we found out what that was, but it's worked really well, and those alarms actually had a 10-year lithium battery.
Okay.
So we didn't have to worry about whether or not the battery had to be replaced once a year. That's one of the things that we really still see a problem with across the country and across the Commonwealth is smoke alarms that are installed, but they're not operational.
So maybe that's something we can talk about again in November.
Absolutely.
Showing the different kinds and talking about the installation so people will understand it better. Because I know a lot of people do this on their own.
Absolutely.
They don't have an electrician to come in and do it.
That's right.
So we want to make sure people know what they have for choices and also how to do it correctly so there's no
That's exactly right.
No problem
And
there.
for anyone that may have mobility issues, and it doesn't matter what age, if they're not comfortable climbing a ladder, we certainly don't want them to do that. We don't want them to get up on a chair where they could fall, but a safer choice would be using a long pole to push the test button, especially if the smoke alarm is on a high ceiling.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea. The end of a broom works quite well.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly.
But and once again, let's just reiterate that anybody that is interested in having their batteries changed and they cannot do it themselves for whatever reason, they can call down to the senior center or they can call not the emergency number, but the regular number for the fire department, and their name will go on a list and someone will get back to them when they can get to them.
Yes, and the fire department number is 978-346-8211.
8211.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now I wanted to just change a little bit here because I know that you don't always live in Merrimac.
That's right.
You actually live in Michigan where you have a farm. And so you go back and forth. And tell us a little bit about how that came to be and how that works for you and the things that you do there that have been able to come and help us here in Merrimac.
Sure, sure. My family has, my mom's still alive, and my family has a 160-acre farm in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And it's a sesquicentennial farm, so it's been in the family over 150 years. So we're very proud of that and very pleased. My father's mother was a Millam, and the Millams are one of the founding families in Kalamazoo County. So there's a lot of history with our farm, and we're the last Millam family farm. Even though I'm a McLeieer, we're the last Millam family farm in Kalamazoo County. So we just had
So it stayed within your mother's side of the family?
It was my father's side, yep.
Father's
and Mom is still alive, and I'm still alive, obviously. So that leads to the transition there. My sister is still alive, although she doesn't live on the farm. She now lives in Texas, and so that's where kind of that transition has taken place, and it's stayed within the family. That's part of the Centennial Farm Preservation Act in Michigan.
Oh, it has a Preservation Act.
Yep, we actually have a plaque from the state of Michigan that when we reached our 100-year anniversary, centennial anniversary, the state sent us a plaque, and that was something my father did in the 1950s when he came back from the war in Korea. And that was something that he was very proud of, that the farm had reached its 100 mark. And then when it reached its sesquicentennial, the 150 mark, then the state sends us a rectangular sign that says this farm is registered as a sesquicentennial. And there was a lot of paperwork that we had to provide.
That's a mouthful.
It is, it is. It's a long thing to
Yeah.
spell out as well, but there was a lot of work that we had to do to provide information to the state. They just don't send these plaques out. It's an actual application process, and a board actually reviews the application to make sure that there has been no lapse in ownership and that it has been a true succession from one generation to another.
Okay, great. So what do you do on the farm? You have horses?
We have horses that we board. When I was growing up, we used to have horses that we raised, but we have horses that we board. We have about 100 tillable acres, which means we have farmland that actually has crops that are planted. And we rotate the fields between winter wheat, field corn, and soybeans. And field corn has been a big commodity right now for the ethanol market, for the fuel industry. So we have a farmer that actually has been a friend of the family for many, many years that actually does the farming and does a wonderful job. He and his father have done our farming for years. My dad used to do the farming, but as life gets busier and we all have more things on our plate, then you really have to look at, what's a better way. And
so you don't do the farming?
I don't do the farming per se, not as much traveling as I do and going back and forth.
Yeah.
But my mom is 82 now, and she's actually still a registered nurse and works every day as a nurse.
Really?
So she does, and she's in great health. But I go back just to make sure that everything's taken care of.
And where does she work?
She works for one of our schools in Kalamazoo as the nurse. Yeah. And she works with the special needs children riding the school bus to and from school. So any of the children that may have autism or may have other special medical conditions where they need a registered nurse to be dedicated and assigned to them to and from school, and she loves it.
Oh,
and she's been the medical director for years with my old high school band when they go on their marching band trips. I mean, it reminds me of when Londonderry comes down and does such a fabulous job during the Santa Parade. Portage Central High School goes on trips, and I believe they're planning a trip this summer to Hawaii. And this will be either the second or the third time they've been to Hawaii. They've been to Vienna, Austria. They've competed internationally.
Wow.
And it's a class AA school district. So very.
Now Kalamazoo is a rather large area.
It is, and actually our school district in Portage would be a suburb of Kalamazoo. So it's just south of Portage, and that's actually where I went to school as opposed to Kalamazoo public schools. But yes, it's one of the larger communities in West Michigan. It's about 45 minutes north of the Indiana border, and we have Interstate 94 that goes between Detroit and Chicago that goes right through Kalamazoo and Kalamazoo County. And we're about an hour south of Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is the second largest city population-wise in the state of Michigan.
Quite large. It's beautiful out that way.
It is, it is. We don't have the hills that we have here and the mountains and so forth when we get out west, but it is still very beautiful, and people are very friendly.
So when you're in Michigan, since you're not farming, what are you doing there?
What I'm doing there is similar to what I do here. I work with schools, and we have a great partnership with a local NBC and ABC media group, Wood TV8 out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. They've actually been our sponsor of the charity since I started 18 years ago. Wood Television has actually been very supportive of projects that we've done here within the town of Merrimac, 910 miles away, and they've actually created some customly produced public service announcements, which a couple years ago we aired on Merrimac TV, talking about holiday fire safety tips and things like that. So whenever we look at projects, we always look at ways that we can try and spread the message, not in one community, but in many communities, to where we can get the important prevention messaging out there. And a lot of times, and unfortunately in Kalamazoo just earlier this week, we had 3 children that were killed in an apartment fire.
Yes, I was going to ask you to speak about that, because I know how this must really go to your heart, where you try to get out there with all of the proactive preventative information so that something like this doesn't happen. Unfortunately, it did, and perhaps the mother left the children alone and a fire was started. I know it's still part of an investigation, but there's a couple of things that I'm sure you'd like to remind people as a result of this.
Absolutely, and in this particular case, we had a 1-year-old and 2 3-year-old children that tragically perished in the fire. Initial reports indicate that they were left home alone. And the latest information that I just received this morning was a 4-year-old child actually made it out. One of their siblings made it out to notify adults that there was a fire. It doesn't take long for a fire to occur, and we don't know what the cause was at this point in time. It's still under investigation. But this is a good point for us to remind parents and caregivers that it takes just a moment for something to happen. It could be a fire, it could be a child that's injured, and that's why it's so important that we make sure we secure the tools such as matches and lighters. We make sure that we have close supervision so that we can prevent any types of injuries from happening. As an educator and a fire service professional that also has an early childhood teaching background, one of the things that I've found is when we educate early and educate often, children will better understand that they have the power to make good choices. But even at 3, 4, or 5, there's still a lot of temptations, and children cannot understand a small fire can become a very large fire very, very quickly. And a match can burn an entire building down. They cannot comprehend that, and they think that they can control fire at that age. Because when we start celebrating birthdays, we do it with candles and a birthday cake. So when a young child is brought up with, we extinguish fire by blowing it out, they don't have comprehension on the size of fire and the fact that all fire isn't extinguished by blowing it out. And that's just part of early childhood development. We all learn things, and we learn things as we're growing in lives, and children really can't learn until they experience for themselves. We can tell them, but until they actually learn it for themselves, they're going to have a better opportunity to remember it. And they don't need to be injured necessarily to learn. But when we do what we call active participation or active learning, and we engage the children in the learning process. So we actually have a 38-foot mobile training center that's headquartered in Kalamazoo. And we've been very fortunate, thanks to our friends from Liberty Mutual Insurance, to be able to bring that excellent educational tool here to Merrimac and to the Pawtucket Regional School District, which has been an awesome opportunity for families to see for themselves how difficult it is to see in a fire. The fact that we need to know 2 ways out. If one way, a doorway is blocked, we need to have a window. We also talk about, what if you have a bedroom upstairs? Well, a home fire escape ladder is a great choice. And we talk about those types of opportunities and those types of pre-planning that we can do. We do fire drills at school. We all need to do a better job of fire drills at home.
Don't go back in.
That's right. That's right. And even here in Merrimac, we had a 4-year-old boy at the time, back in 2007. We were in the Sweetser school, and that night his house caught fire, and he was able to save his family because of those educational messages
I remember
right here in Merrimac.
That was wonderful.
And that was the result of our newest addition. Now he's 6 years old, Jake the fire safety dog.
I can't believe he's 6 now.
I know.
I was hoping you had Jake with you today.
No, unfortunately I don't, but we will bring Jake and let all the viewers see Jake because he is so widely recognized. Jake is a 6-year-old black Labrador retriever. We added him to the program when he was 4 months old, and we use him as a demonstrator to be able to teach children and adults how to crawl low underneath the smoke. So when we talk about ways to get out and we talk about fire safety, Jake actually demonstrates what to do.
So if a dog can do it, so can we.
That's right. And
I can get down. I'm not so sure about getting up.
That's right. And when the children see Jake in action, they're so energized because now we've empowered them with what they can do versus telling them what they can't do.
That's
and
true.
We always want to empower children.
Something positive.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So a great message if we have families that are working with young children on fire safety. One of the things I would suggest is not teach children don't touch matches or lighters because it makes them much more impulsive. But if you see matches or lighters, come tell me, or come tell a grown-up, or come tell a caregiver. Because now we've empowered the child with something that they can do.
Right.
And they can do it each and every time.
Right.
And
Never be afraid to go and tell an adult.
That's right. And children love praise, and they also love feeling that they can accomplish something. And when we give them the right tools and the right knowledge,
because they may save a life.
That's right.
So that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, we're just about done. I can't believe a half an hour has gone so quickly.
It has.
One last message, if you could give a message to the families today, what would you like it to be?
One of the things that we want to make sure all the members at the Merrimac Fire Department are committed to keeping you and your family safe. You can help us by having a home fire escape plan, knowing your 2 ways out, and most importantly, practicing it with your families. If you take a few minutes to be prepared, should the unthinkable occur, you and your family are going to be outside awaiting our arrival, and certainly we want to make sure your family stays safe. Prevention is our key, but should you have an emergency that takes place, don't hesitate calling 911. We would rather come out and make sure that everything is fine rather than respond to a building that's fully involved. Sometimes people think that they just don't want to bother us, and it's never a bother. Please give us a call if you have a concern.
Thank you, Mike, so much for joining us, and we will definitely get you back.
All right.
And hopefully you'll have Jake with us.
Look forward to it.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. This is your town of Merrimac, and we're pleased that you joined us. Good night.